Good morning. Welcome to First Edition, the online ministry of First Community Church. My name is Glenn Miles. I'm the senior pastor here in this amazing congregation, and we are thrilled that you've joined us on this day for worship. We want you to know, no matter who you are, where you're from, what you believe or don't believe, you are welcome and accepted as you are in this church. Right now, there's a QR code up on the screen. Take a moment, won't you please, to capture that code. Use the camera option on your phone. Click on that link. You can register your attendance, submit a prayer concern. We'd love to be in prayer with you. You can also give to the offering if you choose to do so in that way. We'd love to hear from you, no matter what. Today, my sermon is based on the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector from Luke chapter 18. It's an amazing story, frankly, a shocking story. The Pharisee was well respected, admired, and loved. I know Pharisees argue a lot with Jesus in the Bible, but in the broader culture, they were very highly regarded, well educated, many of them very wealthy. The Pharisee is presented as someone who has all the characteristics that you would love to see in a faith community. The tax collector is the exact opposite, but the tax collector asks God for forgiveness and nothing more. And Jesus says he's the one who is justified. It's a shocking story, but it's also one that says to you and me that even in our worst moments, God still comes to us, ready to forgive and give us a chance to begin again, to start anew, to begin afresh. I really love this story, and I think this message will be helpful to all of us. I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. Let's go to worship now.
For the beauty
Jesus tells a story about two men. One of them is a Pharisee, a very religious person. The other is a tax collector, a rogue, a thief, a traitor to his country and to his fellow citizens. Not someone you want to emulate. Jesus lets us know that they've come to worship, to pray. Imagine this. The Pharisee is wearing a beautiful blue suit. Not ostentatious or flashy, but it's clearly expensive. It's been tailor-made to fit him just so. He's wearing a beautiful silk tie underneath it. Again, not flashy or ostentatious, just beautiful. Everything works very well. He's arrived for worship driving a marvelous late model car. Not too flashy though, just enough to show that he's successful. And then he begins by praying, saying, God, I'm so grateful I'm not like that tax collector, that thief, that rogue, that traitor. You know, God, I read my Bible every day. I'm in worship every Sunday. If I miss the service, I watch online. I'm there always. That was supposed to be funny. Thank you very much. I pray every night before I go to bed. I read my Bible every morning. I tithe 10% of my income and my investments. You know, God, that I've given myself fully to you. The other is also, the tax collector is also wearing a blue suit, but it's kind of a robin's egg blue, and it's shiny and polyester looking. He's wearing a big collared silk shirt that's unbuttoned down to here, and he's got about 7 gold chains around his neck, and his posture is very different from that proud Pharisee. His shoulders are slumped. His gaze is at the floor. A single tear falls from his eye. He begins to pray, Lord, and his words catch in his throat. Another tear falls. He finds a deep breath and he says, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. Jesus says to his disciples and to the crowd that's gathered, this one, this tax collector, this rogue, this thief, this traitor, this sinner, he went home justified. The other one did not. It's a shocking story, really, but we miss part of the shock because we don't understand fully 2,000 years later who the Pharisees were. We have a negative view of them because they're most often the ones that argue with Jesus, and Jesus puts them in their place many, many times, and we think of them as a collective group as arrogant and rude. There were arrogant and rude ones, yes, but on the whole, they were well-educated. They were well respected. They were leaders in the synagogue. They were leaders in the community. Sometimes they stood up to the Romans in ways that were dangerous for their own safety. They're admired and well loved. They're the kind of people we would love to have in our church, and we have many like that. The tax collectors are the exact opposite. Traitors, rogues, thieves, terrible people with terrible actions. When Jesus pronounces that the tax collector is the one who is forgiven, justified, made right, it's shocking news to everyone. The implication here is that Jesus is inviting us, like the tax collector, to be honest about who we are, to acknowledge the times we've failed or broken a heart, or a word we don't use often here, sinned. To recognize, as we're being honest and being frank, that we need forgiveness, that there are times when we fail to receive it as well as give it. You see, the relationship that God wants to have with us is one that is formed and based and founded in love and forgiveness. That's the relationship with God, and it's the same relationship here among each other, is one that is based on love and forgiveness. The willingness to name our love and also to recognize our need for forgiveness. And then Jesus ends the parable with an unusual saying. Did you hear it as Joy read it for us? Those who exalt themselves will be humbled. Those who humble themselves will be exalted. Now, think about that for a moment. How do you humble yourself? Do you walk around on the day you decide I'm going to be humble and you tell people, hi, this is my humble day? How am I doing so far? I think I'm doing pretty well. This is my humble day. Do you like the way I'm practicing humility here with you? It doesn't, you laugh because it's silly, it's goofy. That doesn't make any sense. My friend and our former senior pastor here, Dick Wang, who was here for more than 20 years, told a joke. I bet you can even think of it right now. If you heard Dick preach over those 20 years, you probably heard this joke often. Do you remember how it goes? It's kind of like this. Dick would say, well, I want to tell you about this new book I'm working on right now. I'm ready to publish it. The title is Humility and How I Attained It. Yeah, it's not that funny, is it? It's kind of a silly joke. I worked for Dick for 7 years out in California as his associate minister. I heard that joke 4,312 times. And I laughed every time. Why? Because it's true. If you're writing a book about humility and how you attain it, you're not being very humble at all. Here's a way to illustrate it. A couple of days before I graduated from seminary with a Master of Divinity degree, I decided to go and thank my major professor, Fred Norris, for all that he taught me in the time that I was in school with him. So I went up on the second floor of the seminary where all the faculty offices are, and I popped into his office. I didn't have an appointment, but I figured I could just pop in real quick. I said, hi, Dr. Norris. I just want to let you know that I so enjoyed your classes. You taught me so much. And I'll say this, if I can help just one person in my ministry as much as you've helped me, I'll consider myself a success. He stood up, sprang up behind his desk, and he said, nonsense. If you only help one person in the next 30 years, we've failed to teach you how to be a good pastor. Great truth there. Great truth there. False humility doesn't work. That's not what Jesus is asking us to do. If you've prepared a beautiful meal and you've worked all day to make sure that the entree is just so and the salad is just right and all the fixings along with it are wonderfully done, and somebody that you've invited over that evening says, oh my goodness, thank you for such a beautiful meal, your job is not to say, well, I think the broccoli needed a little more salt. Don't you think so? Maybe I could have used a little less pepper on the beef. No. What do you say? Thank you. Thank you. False humility isn't needed. So what is it Jesus is getting at here? Well, Luke is brilliant in the way he's written and designed his gospel. See, this story about the tax collector and the Pharisee, it appears only in Luke, not in Matthew, Mark, or John. Only in Luke. The next story is one that appears in the other gospels, but it's Luke's way of illustrating the story of the Pharisee and the tax collector. It's the story where Jesus says to the children, to the disciples, let the children come to me. Do you remember that story? It's one I tell every time I lead an infant baptism service as a way of reminding us what Jesus teaches us about children. Let them come to me. The disciples are trying to protect Jesus, but not really. They're trying to protect their own reputations. They are, in their own minds, very important friends of Jesus, VIFJ, very important friends of Jesus. And they're even saying that to the people. We are the very important friends of Jesus, and you cannot come any closer. You're making too much noise. Please go to the back of the crowd, please. And what does Jesus say? No. You can almost see him parting the disciples and saying, please, bring your little ones, the babies too. Just bring them. Bring them all to me. And Jesus says to the disciples and to the crowd, if any of you want to be a part of the kingdom of God, become like these little ones, as dependent on God as they are on their parents, for food and shelter, for love and forgiveness. It's Jesus making sure, it's Luke making sure we understand what Jesus' teaching is about. It's when we become like children in the presence of God's Spirit that we're most open to those teachings based on love and forgiveness. A friend of mine told me a story about a friend of hers that was preaching one day, and this preacher's up there giving the sermon, and right on the front row, there's a father and like about a 5-year-old son. And they're having an animated conversation. It's soft, it's quiet, but they're talking back and forth. And the dad is pointing at the son, and the son's kind of shaking his head no. And pretty soon the dad is getting a little more animated, and the people in the first few pews are looking over and trying to see what's going on, what's happening over there. Even the preacher's distracted and keeps looking at the father and son. And finally the father is really frustrated, and you can just tell his finger goes like this, and then this, and the boy goes, "No!" really loud, just like that. So the whole church hears. Now everybody has stopped and looking at the little boy and his father and what's going on down there. And there's more finger waving and pointing. And again, the boy says, "No." And now everyone's really, even the preachers just stopped and watching. And the third time, the boy says, "No." At that point, dad scoops him up, throws him over his shoulder, walks down to the center aisle, and starts walking out the church. And the little boy calls out to the congregation, "Pray for me." Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. In my mind, if Jesus was the preacher, I can imagine Jesus saying, "Wait, Dad, little boy, come here to me. Come here. Come right up here to the chancel and stand with me." And then I imagine Jesus turning off the mic so it's just him and the Father and the Son. He's just talking to the two, just them. I can see him looking at the little boy and saying, "I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're present. Thank you for being here." To the dad, he says the same thing. "I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're present. And Dad, I want you to remember, everyone needs love and forgiveness. And little one, everyone needs love and forgiveness." That's why we're here today, to remind ourselves of that. Bring the little children to me. Allow them into our presence, into our space, to help us remember that what matters more than anything else we might attain, is a hand to hold, a love to be given, a forgiveness to be received. Sometimes we have to allow the children come to be in the church because they're so good at telling the truth, of naming the truth in the room, and we sometimes want to ignore it. I remember last year when the third graders were getting their Bibles. We were all lined up to have our pictures taken, and I was with them, these beautiful little kids dressed up well, and all got their brand new Bibles. And just before the photographer took the picture, I looked at one of the boys and said, "Hey, how's my hair?" And he went, "You're bald." Yes, I am. Thank you for speaking the truth. That's why we need kids in church, to help us pay attention to the truth of who we are. My buddy Mike Yaconelli was a great preacher. He was very well known around the world for leading an organization called Youth Specialties. Every year they had these major youth conventions with thousands of youth workers from all over the country, sometimes from all over the world, who would come to hear Mike and other people speak. They had workshops on how to be great at youth ministry, that sort of thing. I went to a couple of them. I got to know Mike and became really good friends with him. But many people don't know is that Mike was also a pastor at a little church, about 180 members, way up in Northern California, in the town of Wairika. Anybody been to Wairika ever before? Probably not. Little tiny logging town in the shadow of Mount Shasta. They referred to themselves, this is how they called themselves, the Church for Losers, Failures, and Sinners. It was formed way back in the 80s. It was people who knew they needed forgiveness. They showed up in church in jeans and sweatshirts long before being casual in church was a thing. I'm about the last person in this church that wears a tie, and that's okay. Long before that was a thing, that's the way they came to church, knowing that they would be accepted as they are. Soon in the community, a few years after the church was founded, they became known as a safe place and space for families with special needs kids. And they knew that if one of those kids needed to run up and down the aisle, didn't bother Mike, it didn't bother the parishioners. If somebody made some noise or got a little loud over there, that's totally fine. No big deal either. There was one family who had a special needs son who was about 13. He loved to sit way in the back And he liked to be up a little bit higher than everybody else so he could see what was going on out there in the pews. Just kind of check out people from behind without having to look around when sitting in the middle. And so they got him a ladder, a 4-foot ladder that he would climb up on and sit there in the back and watch the service. On this one particular Sunday, Mike is given his sermon. He goes right on past 20 minutes. He goes right on past 30 minutes. Now it's 35 minutes. And now he's getting darn close to 40. And just as he is, he says, I have one more thing to say. That little boy sitting on the ladder in the back of the church says, no, please stop. You know what Mike did? He stopped. Yeah, he stopped. Let the little children come because they will help us. They will humble us to pay attention to the truth of the teachings of Jesus. Sometimes it is that simple and that difficult. I have a friend who still attends the church that I used to lead. She's there every Sunday. If she's in town, she's in church. She's a faithful attendee. Not a member, but an attendee. She's there every week. She volunteers with their mission programs. She feeds the homeless on Tuesday nights with their Micah ministry, like 400 people there for dinner on a Tuesday night. If the minister mentions a book that she's reading in the sermon, my friend will go and buy the book and invite 6 or 7 other friends in the church to join her a month later for a book club. She's just an amazing person, generous with her gifts. Oh, and she's an atheist. And she said to me after I got to know her, the more I pay attention to Jesus, the more amazed I become at what happens in my life. The more I let his teachings influence me, the more I find myself willing to be gracious and forgive. And she said, I'm not perfect, Glenn, you know that. But the more I pay attention to Jesus, the more my life seems to be filled with joy. I still don't believe in God, but I believe in Jesus, she said to me. Let me be clear about this. God prefers kind, gracious, and loving atheists over angry, judgmental, bullying Christians who want to force you into a fight in order to make themselves look good in front of a camera. God prefers the loving atheists over any bullying Christian, 100 times out of 100. It really is that simple, isn't it? To let those teachings guide us in everything we do and say. And yet, maybe the most difficult thing for us to accept is our own acceptance. Maybe the most difficult thing for us to accept is our need for grace. That God isn't waiting for us to get everything lined up perfectly before that forgiveness and grace comes. It's already there, but I've had too many conversations. I've been this way myself. Too often we push grace away because we're afraid. Because grace, that's for losers and failures and sinners, not for me. Look, God, at how much I've achieved in my life. I've got a great job, a great family, 2.3 perfect kids, a dog and a cat that like each other, that get along. I've got everything lined up. I don't need grace. No. Robert Capon, who's one of my favorite theologians, says you can't sell grace, you can't even give it away because most people think it's for the losers. How many of you are on social media? It's okay, I am. Can you admit it? Oh, good. At the last service, like one hand went up, like, come on, there's more than one person. Have you ever seen this? Have you ever seen this happen? You'll be on Facebook and there'll be somebody, maybe you don't know them very well, but their pictures are just perfection. The children, there's 2 children, they're beautiful, well-dressed, coordinated outfits. Maybe they're on vacation in Italy. They've just gotten back from a cruise on Lake Como, and now they're going to go wine tasting, and the wine is amazing, and the food is beautiful, and everything's lovely and wonderful and perfect. And you know what happens? The research on this is real. You know what happens when you see those photos? You get a little depressed. You're brought down a little bit because it's like, oh, look at how perfect their lives are. I'm not in Italy. I'm stuck doing the laundry. Well, I'm checking my phone. But here's the deal. If you open the curtain on their lives, what will you see? You'll see one of the parents saying, come on, kids, get dressed. We got photos we got to take. You'll see maybe dad's frustrated because it's costing a lot more on this trip than I thought it was going to be. And the kids are not happy either because they really aren't having fun. They're being dragged from this to this to this to the other thing. Even the dog and the cat are like, fine, we'll smile for the camera, but we're done with each other. You know that's true, right? There is no one of us, if you can peel back the curtain and see us as we truly are, who's going to look perfect or all put together. That's why Jesus tells this story. It's so that we can stand with the tax collector and say, God, I need your love. I need your forgiveness. Is it possible? Is it possible that someday we'll be able to leave our egos here while we open our hearts, our minds, our souls, and our hands to the goodness of God's grace given to you, to me, to us? Amen.
Christ, whose glory
thank you for joining us for worship. I trust that you'll spend this week considering how can I build my life on a foundation based on love and forgiveness. If we practice those two simple traits, we certainly can have a life that is blessed. We're putting that QR code back up there on the screen for you. We'd love for you to register for your attendance in case you haven't done that yet, to submit a prayer concern if you have one, and also would you take a moment to prayerfully consider making a financial gift to First Community Church. As you can imagine, sharing this message of hope and love and grace for the greater Columbus area, in fact, for around the world, takes a little bit of expense to do so. We'd love for you to support us in this and share with us as we continue to share this good news, this great news of the grace of God given for all.